Okay, well, great. We'll go ahead and get started. I know there's still some joining, but I don't want to delay too long. So, welcome everyone. I am Laura Schrake with the Council of the Great Lakes Region, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Our webinars each month are part of our Business and Sustainability Program, which is supported in part by the Herb Family Foundation. The program engages businesses and stakeholders on a broad range of sustainability topics like water stewardship, but also climate, carbon reduction, circular economy, sustainable food production, and much more. And thanks to the support of our funders, partners, and our engaged network, the Council of the Great Lakes Region is bringing issues that are critical to the Great Lakes region into the spotlight and sharing knowledge and insights as we solve for sustainability. During today's webinar, we will discuss the critical role of corporate water stewardship and the importance of robust processes and verification practices. I am thrilled to be joined by Noelle Brigham from A.O. Smith, a Great Lakes headquartered company. A.O. Smith is a global water technology company. They provide water heating and water treatment solutions. So water is obviously important to A.O. Smith's business, but they take their commitment to water and environmental stewardship beyond just their products and embed it into their operations. So we'll hear today how they are doing that, and Noelle will share how they've made water stewardship a priority within the company. But first, as many of you know, the Great Lakes region is North America's economic engine and guardian to the largest surface freshwater system in the world. The Great Lakes are an invaluable natural resource, not only for the millions of people who rely on them for drinking water, recreation, and economic activity, but also for the many industries that depend on clean and abundant water. The Great Lakes hold roughly 21% of the world's surface water and 84% of North America's. And while the region's water resources may seem plentiful, they do face a variety of challenges from aging infrastructure and pollution to the effects of climate change and growing water demand. And these challenges require thoughtful, responsible action from both the public and the private sectors. So the private sector today must also contend with a changing and complex regulatory environment, as well as heightened community expectations. This is why having clear, accountable, and transparent water stewardship plans is more important than ever. And this is also why the Council of the Great Lakes region, with support of the Water Council and founding partners, launched the Great Lakes Water Innovation and Stewardship Exchange. I won't go into too much detail for the sake of time, but I do want to provide just a quick introduction of the initiative because it's very relevant to today's webinar topic. And I'll also provide a link to it in the chat. But Great Lakes Wise is a multi-stakeholder initiative created to ensure the region's water resources are used wisely and responsibly, to protect them for future generations, and to sustain the long-term economic success of the region. It serves as a peer-to-peer platform for accelerating corporate water stewardship, developing effective water solutions, and actioning projects that address regional water challenges and opportunities across key sectors in the region. Most recently, highlighted in last month's webinar, the WISE initiative launched a regional gap analysis that will serve as a foundational document for identifying projects and collective water stewardship efforts in the region. A.O. Smith is a founding partner of this initiative, along with the others that are shown on the slide. And we are inviting other businesses in the Great Lakes region to join this committed group of companies as we move forward. So if this is of interest to you, please reach out to me for more information on how you can get involved. Corporate water stewardship is an essential part of sustainability strategies, especially in a region where water issues have a direct and lasting impact on the environment and local communities. So as I mentioned in today's session, we'll hear from A.O. Smith on why water stewardship makes sense for their business, Noelle Brigham is joining us today. She is the Director of ESG at A.O. Smith, where she leads all aspects of ESG across the company, including global strategy development and implementation. She is a licensed professional engineer with over 25 years of experience in sustainability and environmental engineering in consumer products, manufacturing, and consulting industries. So we hope you'll leave today's webinar with some ideas and inspiration that can help your organization improve its water stewardship and management practices, both locally and globally. So yeah, it's my sincere pleasure to now hand it over to Noelle. Thank you, Noelle.
Thank you. And thank you for having me today. All right, I pull up our presentation. So as Laura said in her introduction, we'll be talking about corporate water stewardship and A.O. Smith's work around developing water stewardship strategy and implementation. As an overview of what we'll be covering today, I'll go through some background about A.O. Smith and water use and ways to think about how to break down different types of uses in an organization. We'll talk about how you get started with water stewardship, different frameworks that are available, initial data and analytics, some considerations into goal setting, as well as other considerations about the business and different lessons learned within the water industry. And finally, some next steps. As a background, Laura mentioned in the introduction about A.O. Smith's business. We're a water technology company, and this slide shows some of our North America products. They range from water heaters, boilers, and water treatment products. The company has a global footprint. Here's a list of all of our locations across North America, Europe, and Asia and Pacific. At these different locations, our operations consist of manufacturing as well as office and warehouse space. And this slide shows some of the key or high-level processes in the manufacturing. These pictures are from water heating, assembly, and manufacturing. So as you can see, there's some steel-related operations, whether it be cutting and welding, washing and applying glass to the heating products, as well as any engineering and testing and product development. And so why water stewardship? Why is this important to A.O. Smith business? It was identified as a priority topic for A.O. Smith through an external study. We reached out to many stakeholders to try and identify what was key to our business. Water stewardship was priority for us. It's consistent with our corporate values to be a good corporate citizen, as well as to be innovative. Also, in our operations, thinking about ESG impacts, we do use water in our operations. And so that certainly is part of our strategy, as well as we have an opportunity with those water treatment products for the innovation, both in water softening and filtration. And with some of the other notes on the slide from our leadership, they're leaders in the industry, with different associations. And overall, according to our values, we feel it's an absolute necessity to our company. So thinking about what frameworks are out there for water stewardship, it is an evolving landscape. And as I put this list together, I was trying to put them in order, a little bit of a timeline, just to show how frequently and how growing these frameworks are. Starting with the GRI framework in 2018, and then there's still some on the international side with the International Sustainability Standards Board that are future coming. So a lot of different programs. If you kind of dig into the details, there's a lot of common elements within each one. And it kind of boils down to understanding your impacts, risks and opportunities, and then prioritizing those risks and opportunities, and then forming that strategy once you have those main impacts identified, how to address those, setting metrics and targets, a communication strategy, and then as well as governance, if there's any policies needed, data governance. They're all common elements to those frameworks. One that I don't have on this slide, after reviewing the list of attendees, the Envision sustainability framework has a lot of water quality embedded in that as well. It's applicable to infrastructure projects, and it's very similar to a LEED program, but applicable to kind of the built environment and not necessarily to buildings. So if you're in a role where you're building a lot of infrastructure projects, Envision is a great framework to reference for water stewardship excellence and practices. As far as disclosure, and this is voluntary disclosure, the CDP has a water module. So that's an area for rigorous reporting and various disclosures. It is scored, so that's really helpful to have that evaluation and get some feedback on your practices. So one of the frameworks that was described in the previous slide is the wave water stewardship. And this is what A.O. Smith chose to develop our water stewardship strategy. It's from the Water Council program, and this slide gives kind of the major steps involved in becoming wave verified. There is a third-party verification, which is valuable from a stakeholder perspective, that there's confidence that you have rigor in your program, and also that there's no major gaps in your program and evaluations. So as you notice, one of the steps in WAVE and some of those other frameworks is to first understand your water use and impacts. One thing about water, it's very contextual. I think from this audience, we have different individuals from universities, the private and public sector. So everyone uses water in a different way. And so a challenge to your organization could be different from a manufacturing. As part of just a tip on implementing, how do you break down what your water use is? Some tools could be an internal survey just to understand where water is coming from, procurement of water, what are the key points of water discharge, how is it being used? Perhaps after the survey, you may choose to take it to another level of detail by doing kind of boots on the ground assessments. And perhaps, a visual that could result from that is to the right, showing a more detailed breakdown within certain facilities. How is that water being used to get that understanding? And out of that, you can summarize these uses and practices as an enterprise. So certainly that's what's unique about WAVE, is it's designed to look across your entire business and footprint versus an isolated facility. So it can help as a whole organization narrow down those areas of focus. So another step involves assessing risk. And there's some really helpful tools, and these are free and publicly available. The one that for WAVE that we engage with was the Water Resources Institute Aqueduct tool. There's also a WWF risk filter, and these will determine different risk factors based on an address or a location. With the Aqueduct tool, you can run an export, kind of a bulk export of number of facilities, and which is really helpful to import into Excel and create a visual such as this heat map. can give you a great indication across all these different risk factors, what stands out for your organization, what are areas of focus. So I really think that the heat map is a great way to take a large number of sites and kind of see what stands out, create that different coloring to bring forth which part of the water risk is most important. And so after assessing risks would be the next step would be to prioritize different locations. And it's always helpful to kind of overlay that risk with different metrics. In this case, it might be risk versus quantity. For other industries, it could be risk versus pollutants, risk versus whatever water metric that you're of interest to your industry. It can be overlaid to help create a nice prioritization map. So here's an illustrative example. So if it'll help choose a few facilities to take that either that deeper dive or to target as various ones to do projects. And so the final steps of the WAVE process is to create that water stewardship statement, and as well as an action plan and timeline. And so this is an example of how we proceeded at A.O. Smith. I mean, we certainly, as we finished the verification process, it wasn't the end of the work that we needed to do as an organization. We continued to move forward with additional studies, pilot studies, internal workshops. And our goal was to create a water goal, which we recently announced. We did create that in year 2, and now we're advancing into goal implementation. So moving forward, so the WAVE certification occurred, and we're now into action plan year 1. One of the steps taken was to complete a pilot assessment. And so kind of starting small and getting a deeper understanding and expanding across different locations. And so this was a team that cross-functional team did a deeper dive where we did identify what are best management practices, some mitigation strategies, data gaps, things that we needed to continue to understand or collect more data. After summarizing those, things that were in common across the organization were expanded. Following that, there was a large workshop bringing in multiple disciplines, locations, that was facilitated for us. We had a long list of recommendations and prioritized projects to continue to research and understand. And then after further vetting of that list, we came up with a project list and estimated savings from these different initiatives. And then after all of this research and collaboration, we did announce a water goal. This is a snapshot from our ESG report. There's 2 elements to it, whether it be water recycling and water savings. We continued as part of goal setting to create some alternatives analysis to address and look at different projects for some of our locations. And we worked on internal alignment and timeline for these projects. And then we announced our goal, and we have an annual savings of 40 million gallons by 2030. And that was based on a 2023 baseline. So thinking about when you're setting goals and different metrics, this slide contains some common metrics across the water stewardship frameworks. So scanning the list, again, with water being so contextual, one of these metrics or goal setting could be more applicable to different industries. As well as one thing to keep in mind is as you're developing that goal, is thinking about how to collect all of that data. when you're looking at an enterprise-wide program, there's multiple locations and different geographies, and there's different languages, units of measure. And so thinking about whether you're going to leverage a system or technology for that data collection, the frequency of data. Sometimes water is billed monthly. In other jurisdictions, it can be annually or quarterly. So that's something to understand up front so that as you're monitoring progress, that you're getting feedback from your mechanism in a timely manner. And then also thinking about with auditing and assurance related to ESG data, what evidence is needed to collect, whether it be copies of the invoices, snapshots of meter readings, to make that part of your data collection will make that third-party assurance much more smoothly if you build that in on the upfront process. So on this next slide, if you notice kind of back in the beginning when we announced some of our water stewardship areas of focus, the communities in which we operate are part of A.O. Smith's values. And so as part of that community aspect, we partnered with Great Lakes Wise, and Laura gave an introduction to the organization. So we became a founding member along with some of our other partner industries. And as a group, we're looking at water sustainability solutions and collective action in the Great Lakes. And as Laura mentioned, we recently completed a gap analysis to help bring some understanding to what are the top issues in the Great Lakes. In addition, A.O. Smith works with some not-for-profit industries in leadership as far as understanding water treatment, as well as water treatment research through the Water Quality Association and the Water Quality Research Foundation. So to wrap up, I have a number of considerations and things that came forward during our water stewardship journey. For instance, we'll just start with the water data. A lot of facilities, a fence line water meter, it has a lot of information. It's a good place to start, just understanding your use. With the second bullet, things can be cyclical, especially if you have some operations with cooling. The ambient temperatures can impact that use in different times of the year. So it's good to have data and analytics over the long haul to understand when those ups and downs occur. So I had like a 12-month time frame, but of course, the more that you have, the more helpful it is. Even using those water utility bills and tracking over that period of time can give you a lot of information to build your strategy. Cross-functional engagement is very important, whether it be on an external with a vendor, internally. All the process experts have been very insightful about different opportunities, as well as capital planning processes and in the product development side. And solutions could take some time. They could require a feasibility study on quality or different operational impacts. So that cross-functional group is really key to building out those different studies and working together to make sure it's a viable solution. Another helpful program is to complete a pilot study. It gives you a quick read on if there is low-hanging fruit, things that are quick to address with minimal resources. What kind of return can be achieved from those? What are the best management practice? What's in common across the organization? Is a large project needed, and what's that timeline? A lot of that can be learned in a deep dive through a pilot study. Other things too is just to learn what you have to leverage, things such as your PLCs to automate different processes, your asset care and maintenance programs, different inspections that are already in place, as well as leveraging your capital process to look for opportunities. On the project implementation, I think this number one concern has been a point of discussion in a lot of water stewardship programs. In general, water, this is like region specific and location specific, but water does have a low cost. And there's often sometimes energy trade-offs related to water projects. You're bringing in pumps and different electrical components that could increase that energy footprint. And so value engineering, looking at multiple solutions, using existing projects to help improve the return on investment or leverage some of the savings through those projects is a way to approach this. Another thing to think about in planning and timelines is there's often a lot of long lead times for equipment and different inflation changes that we've seen over the years, as well as labor availability. So those are just some considerations as you build out your timeline and strategy. So for next steps, from the action plan that we saw a few slides ago, A.O. Smith we're in the strategy implementation. So we're working through additional proofs of concept, continuing with our data and analytics, and expanding our learnings to other locations. We'll continue to partner with the Water Council and WISE for future projects. And product innovation and continuous improvement is ongoing, and highlighting some of our innovations and some of our water stewardship products through our reverse osmosis products. There's a lot of work being done to increase the efficiency of water, as well as in water softening technology. So a lot of research. We have a technology center where a lot of that occurs, and we continue to look for improvements in our products. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to the question and answers. And I think, Laura, I will turn it back over to you for this next part.
Great. Thank you, Noelle. Yeah, thank you for that presentation. It's always helpful to take a step back and kind of look at the process of that goal setting and how you got to where you are, and how you strategize to sort of reach those goals. So thanks for walking us through that and sharing a little bit about what's next. So we have some questions that have started coming through, so we can go ahead and jump right into those. I do want to start with some that came in with the registrations, though, and then we'll get to some that are coming in live. So the first question that I would like to, I guess, kick off with is advice that you might have for small and medium-sized businesses prioritizing water stewardship. So companies that might have limited resources.
Yeah, I think my advice would be, as we were talking in the slides, the fence line metering is a really important piece of data. You can learn a lot just by downloading that from your utility or starting to track that on an ongoing basis. I would recommend to start small. We learned a lot from our pilot studies. So if it's just isolating either a portion of your operations or however you think you can quickly learn about your different water uses. And then from there, you can expand across your organization.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure that not all companies, especially those smaller ones, have dedicated teams. So understanding what those tools that are available to them, publicly available, is always great to have on hand. Great. Well, thanks, Noelle. And then another question that we had was regarding the Verified Water Stewardship Program. So what are the key advantages of having a Verified Water Stewardship Program in place from both an environmental and corporate perspective?
Yeah, so having a verified process, it was really helpful. It demonstrated our commitment. Our stakeholders hold it in a higher regard. The verification also helps confirm adherence to the process and a defensible program. And it's really nice that when you work with the different verifiers to confirm that you're not missing a key element or overlooking an aspect of the framework. And so it's been very valuable to us to go through that process and then have that verification for confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you mentioned it and I missed it, but how long did that verification take AO Smith, or I guess an average time frame that it might take most companies?
That's a good question. I think the actual verification process was, I'll say around 3 months. There was some upfront preparation work. And so maybe a total of 8 or 9 between the preparation and then actually launching that verification. So that's maybe on average what it took our organization.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Um, and then in terms, I guess again with the water stewardship practices, how can companies align their water stewardship practices with their broader environmental goals without sacrificing operational efficiency? I think that's probably the key part of that question is sort of making sure that goals can be achieved without impacting the business.
Right. I think the key to that is that that cross-functional group, making sure that all the different parts of the organization are represented, whether it be product development or operations. I believe some of these projects could actually help improve operations or efficiency. In some cases, there could be maybe a water service issue where you've, through the stewardship program have brought new infrastructure in that could improve some of their, circumstances in the operation. For capital projects, there could be an evaluation of water impacts as part of the engineering and design of the project. So that's something that can be built in up front that would, go hand in hand or minimize any kind of project related design. So I think by adding it or adding water stewardship to those different systems, and it creates that parallel work that happens and can prevent any issues as related to the operations.
Mhm. That's great. And that connects with another question that we'd had about if it can link to efficiency improvements. So there can be a direct correlation with efficiency improvements linked to water conservation and management efforts. So yeah, that's great. Um, Let me just go through some of these other questions that we've got. So let me also ask you if you, let's see, some best practices for water usage and conservations that companies in the Great Lakes region might want to consider adopting.
Yeah, I think there's a number of best practices that are just simply administrative controls, things such as turn it off and automation, maintenance of different systems, monitoring of your water use data. Those types can bring issues forward quickly if there is some sort of infrastructure related. I think identifying equipment upgrades that conserve water. I know things such as fixtures, valves, different potential areas, repairing leaks. So that just overall assessment on fixtures is really helpful. Investigating opportunities to reuse water. Where in the operations are there opportunities to recirculate, reuse? That's always a great conservation measure. And then I think we mentioned this before, but anytime to integrate water use as part of a capital project design, just to an eye on if the project's going to have positive or negative impacts. And then as you're engineering and designing, it is a way to upfront minimize those, or, in that best case scenario, to actually make the project better by conserving the water.
Fantastic. Those are great suggestions. I'm sure quite valuable to many who have tuned in. I want to also, apologies, I have a dog in the background that's just decided to start barking. Okay, sorry. One of the questions that has come in around your presentation, you talked a lot around water quantity. Can you touch a little bit on water quality, or let's see, or with operations upstream or downstream of your direct operations?
Yeah,
So I guess, are you doing any work with water quality is the question.
yeah, I mean, definitely in our products, as far as water quality, related to our operations. I mean, certainly we do a lot with water quality. We have a lot of permits and programs around our water discharges. That those are managed in our environment, health, and safety group. And so, yes, there's a lot of activity and projects and work within that part of the organization as well.
Great, thank you. And let's see, also, can you share some of the challenges facing companies when it comes to corporate water stewardship? Are there any challenges that stand out, maybe from resources to data, and maybe how, of those challenges, maybe how they can be overcome?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges is just setting up a robust data collection program with that auditability built in. And across a large organization, it could take a representative at each location to kind of help with that day-to-day or month-to-month collection and review. There are AI processes out there as well that are emerging, where they can do AI scrapes of bills that can help automate some of that work. So overall, I would definitely recommend it. It can be challenging, and especially in locations where if you're getting very infrequent water bills, to start to understand how the business uses water. So I think it's a challenge, but it's something that if you plan for, it can make things easier as you're starting to look across your enterprise. I would say that something that's challenging is the cyclical nature of water use. So it's at any given time, and you certainly want to look at long-term trends versus if you're just taking a snapshot, perhaps of summer months, that water use could look really different over an annual process. So I think it's also figuring out what time frame makes the most sense to start looking for progress or different trends. And as we mentioned before, a challenge is if you're doing large projects, understanding what that return on investment, or or prioritizing, if you're struggling with that, different projects based on the return. It maybe be like the cost per investment, to really look at that, and that'll help you decide which projects to do. And then also be concerned with that energy trade-off as you're designing and thinking about different systems, that it takes sometimes energy to move water, and that can be if you're having in parallel greenhouse gas goals or energy use goals, that those are things to keep an eye on, how those two interact.
Yeah, those are great, great examples. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, I want to go to a question around the wave, because you talked quite a bit about the verification. Can you just sort of address how verification tools like WAVE ensure accountability and transparency, and why it's critical for building trust with stakeholders and with the community?
Yes, I think in general in ESG, there is a trend toward audit and assurance. A lot of stakeholders who use the data and the programs really value that third-party view. And so verification brings that confidence, it brings that extra level of review and to the program. So I think it's very valuable from that perspective, that that's just the general direction that stakeholders would like to see. And and also benefited us to go through the process and continue to learn and get feedback that we addressed all the different steps and that we had a robust program.
Great. Yeah, and is there, let's see. So the first question that we asked, or that I had asked that came in from the registrations was around small and medium-sized companies. This question, I guess, is along the same lines, but it's really more for any company that's just beginning their water stewardship journey. Is there advice that you could offer, regardless of, company size or organization type for that matter, on maybe where just to start if they're just entering, or just starting this water stewardship journey?
Yeah, I think as all those frameworks outline, it's just, I think step one was just being an understanding of your use and your context. Um, for when we were joining WAVE, one of the things we did was survey. We just had a great big survey of different sites just to understand from that diverse list and group of countries, what all the operations may look different. There may be some sites that have similar. So I think just a nice view of the company and the water use, and get some preliminary quantity data, some understanding of the wastewater, and what's the, how is that being discharged and where. I think a lot of that basic information will map that out in like maybe a large spreadsheet would be a great start. And then you can start to see those common elements and things will stand out as far as practices across the organization. I think you mentioned, Laura, when we were talking about an earlier question, those watershed risk assessment tools are free. So the World Resources Aqueduct or the WWF tools, they're very user-friendly, they're free of charge. And so even if you're a small team, those can give you a lot of information and help point you in a direction, and very easy to use. So I definitely recommend those two tools, and then decide from there where you want to continue to do deeper dives or who else in your organization you want to engage with. So I think it's just starting big and narrowing down.
Great advice. Thank you. Um, okay, I'm going to switch gears and go back over to a couple that have come in, and one is asking about your focus on potable process water uses. Let's see, does your focus most do you focus mostly on potable process water uses, or does it also include stormwater, wastewater too?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say all those when we did our survey and tried to understand what activities were at each facility, it did include stormwater, process, the whole picture of water. And so I think that would be important. That's a very good point, to expand everything water, as it could be depending on your footprint or your operations. One thing may stand out in your analysis.
Great. And yeah, I guess your analysis would determine where you start first, right? So maybe you might not be able to address every water aspect. So set your priorities around your water stewardship goals.
Correct. It can help, and that can help you understand what other programs you have in place for these other water uses as well. There could be some more advanced programs in your organization for those aspects.
Great. And we have another question about that's come in around the type of work that you would partner with Great Lakes Wise or with the Water Council. We're just asking if you can give any examples of types. Oops, sorry, it's moving around on me. Okay, can you give an example of type of project you would partner with WISE or the Water Council where maybe you can't meet operational goals internally or to broaden community impact? So I think maybe just a little bit of the benefits of partnering with other organizations rather than going at everything alone.
Yes, we found a lot of benefit in partnering. Mostly as we kind of saw from our timeline, that water, it just continues to evolve at a very rapid pace. A lot of these partnerships help bring awareness to challenges, barriers, opportunities. Certainly the groups that we're working with in WISE and the Water Council, there's just such a diverse types of businesses that it's nice to hear how others are, implementing WAVE, the challenges they have just as a kind of a think tank environment. Also, since water is a shared resource, there could be collective action that may be required to address some of the biggest issues. That's where, we're WISE when we were ideating as corporate companies. And WISE is helping with evaluate the Great Lakes area as far as what gaps are there and what might be opportunities for that. And then I just can't stress enough. I think even as I was replying earlier, having those multiple perspectives, some of the things in the gap analysis talks about policy development. So if there is future policy, regulatory, it's great to be connected so that those multiple perspectives can all be part of that discussion or part of the thought process around what policies would be helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that regional gap analysis that was produced under Great Lakes Wise is a good example because there was as part of the development of that gap analysis, there was a session with all of the partners of Great Lakes Wise contributing their input and feedback. And so with one organization or one company trying to do that on their own, you don't have all the diverse perspectives feeding into it. So I think that's just one example that's already with WISE that I think it has made that analysis was far more well-rounded because of the input of all of the partners and the different stakeholders that was able to contribute to it. So we've got just a couple more questions. They're kind of connected. So one is they're both around sort of partnerships and collaboration. One question that's come in is if you see any opportunities for partnership or collaboration with academic partners or academic researchers.
And I'll answer this to the best of my knowledge. I know that right next, I'm sitting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is our world headquarters, and adjacent is a technology development center and R&D. And I know they have a lot of really strong partnerships with universities. And so I don't know the details, but yes, certainly I know that they have a lot of engagements with various organizations on the technology and product development side. I'll just note too that there are partnerships for assessments that we've worked with different universities through funding of the Department of Energy. They've had some industry related engagements that we've worked with some of our local universities. So absolutely, I think that there is a lot of interaction.
Yeah, that's great. And the final question, which is not necessarily specific to academic researchers, but just how can organizations leverage partnerships with local stakeholders and communities to further enhance their water stewardship practices in the region? So I think you touched on that a little bit already. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, I think for us, the Water Council is a very great organization that has a diverse group of participants who kind of connect to communities. So I think through some of these organizations is a great way to make sure that that perspective is part of your strategy and understanding.
Yeah, that's thank you. And yeah, I guess I would just also add, along with the Water Council and the Wave Verification, the Council of the Great Lakes Region, and the WISE initiative were, platforms where multi-stakeholders can come together and really value from that peer-to-peer interaction. So I would certainly encourage organizations to get involved in those platforms, because while they might be business focused, we're also bringing other stakeholders to the table, such as academia and researchers or local government, other nonprofits. So there's a lot of value in having those roundtables, and just benefiting from the different perspectives and experiences. Um, so yeah, so I think we've gone through the questions. Hopefully I haven't missed anything. Let me just have one more. Quick look. Yeah, I guess the last question for you, Noelle, is around is asking about the CEO water mandate, if AO Smith is involved with them.
Yes, I did see that when I was doing my research, certainly that was a common one. And it is a commitment level structure. And that is not something we're working on now, but I agree, it's certainly a framework out there, a commitment structure that would be worth looking at. I think it is a very common one.
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks. I know this was a bit of a drill with all the questions, so I really appreciate you answering them and sharing your experience. Thank you so much for the presentation, and to AO Smith, and you for your leadership in corporate water stewardship. I know I appreciate the transparency with sharing AO Smith's journey, and sharing your knowledge with us. I also want to add that it's always a privilege working with you, Noelle, and definitely happy to have you on board with the other partners of Great Lakes WISE. Your input has been really valuable. And to our audience, again, if you're interested in getting involved in Great Lakes WISE or knowing more about the wave verification, feel free to reach out to me. I did put a link to both of them in the chat, where you can get more information. You can also download the recent regional gap analysis that we talked about from the Great Lakes WISE link. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Um, Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will share a link to the recording early next week. And we'll also be able to share the presentation when that email goes out with the recording link. And lastly, I want to mention we have two webinars scheduled for next month. On April 3rd, we will be looking at carbon capture and storage in the Great Lakes region with a focus on Ontario. And then on April 24th, we will be discussing the results of a 2024 nationwide sustainability survey on consumer behavior, with a focus on the Great Lakes region. So I hope that everyone will be able to join us for those. So yeah, thank you for today, Noelle. Thank you again for your time, and have a great day.